Hey traders, this is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Wednesday, February 3rd, and this is your end of day recap. So I would say theme of the day, I don't know, there was a couple of different themes kind of playing out a little bit, and we'll look into a few of those today. But I would say momentum names, tech really strong for the first I would say most of the day till about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And then it seems like some profit taking kind of came in there, especially with the Qs. You can see the Qs finished down 40 basis points for the day. And from the open down about 1%. So just to review the indices, which and SPY finished basically flat for the day. IWM finished just a little bit in the green for the day. Interesting here, this move in bonds. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about the move in bonds and a little bit about possible value rotation. So let me get to that. I want to talk about just the price action in the S&P. You could see a little bit of profit taking around the open most likely, and we kind of reversed. However, we didn't go too far, and we topped out right around 230 for the day. So like I said, good price action. If you're doing some day trading and a little bit of swing trading, could take some profits on some things. Q's a little bit of a different picture, right? They got to the top of value for the day, right? And they stalled out here and finished right around the lows of the day. So a little bit weaker. I thought the weakness in Amazon was kind of noticeable. I haven't really been trading, Amazon. When we talked about, we did not do an end of day video yesterday because we had a really nice we had a really nice member webinar yesterday with Oliver Kell, who's the U.S. Investing Championship contest winner of 2020. So if anybody wants that recording, they're welcome to email me, and I'm happy to provide that. But that was a member webinar that we gave. A lot of good questions and a lot of good Q&A. Really nice job he did last year, and I think he's off to a good start this year. But let me just move back to the I didn't do an end of day video, a public end of day video yesterday, but this Amazon is a good example of like something to, in my opinion, like it seems like it's a head scratcher for people. I guess maybe myself too, but they reported good earnings. Obviously Bezos is leaving, so that may be weighing on the stock, but you have to remember with these earnings reports, just because, they crushed it last quarter, but that's last quarter. It's in the past. I tried to explain this yesterday in the trading room too, but for a lot of earnings reports, it's going to be what you think is going to happen next, not what happened last quarter. So if you think that you see a company report big numbers that happened last quarter. So yeah, a lot of times it does set a precedence and a baseline of how a company is performing and so forth. But you have to realize that the expectations are very high. That's the other thing with a lot of these earnings reports. It's the expectations. And if everybody knows that a company is going to report strong earnings, it really has to do it. It has to do everything perfect. I don't know if they didn't do everything perfect, but I just think this name has just been too difficult, right? So if you're a big fan of Amazon, I like Amazon. I have it in my long-term account. I have it in the TTG Trend Portfolio too. But in terms of like trying to swing trade this thing, it's gotten just too difficult. It should not, like, it was down 2% for the day and sold off all throughout the session. Now it's got support here, but I'll continue to monitor it. I've tried it a couple times thinking it was going to break higher here, and it just, I think I made a good amount of money on this little move, and then lost the last piece of a trade, on that. But it's just very difficult, and I think obviously, like, the media is still caught up in GameStop. So many other stocks and so many other opportunities out there. If a name is just not doing it for you in terms of the price action, there's just plenty of other things to look at. So there's nothing wrong with reducing, positions too. Just because, like, if you love the name, maybe you hold a smaller position, than normal, but I figured I would just talk about Amazon just for a minute. Google was okay, held the gap, I guess. Sold off a little bit at the end of the day, but Amazon just, I don't know, it just doesn't seem right to me. I don't know what else they would really have to do. It did take out that virgin point of control that we talked about yesterday, and it is holding this support down here of right around 33.10. All right, so that's the story with that. But again, like I said, there's a number of really good plays. Interesting today that look at the oil and gas names. So we been talking about this. I have not put on anything. I know a couple of people put on, a couple of traders in the room put on some energy plays. But look at crude breaking out of this sideways action. There was a big XLE call spread that was put on the other day, and you could see crude kind of coming out of here. I think crude can get up to around $59. But yeah, I mean, nice strength in XLE, and I think we're starting to kind of see a turn back. Some of these areas really got beaten up in terms of in terms of like the material space, right? Over the last few weeks, I've talked about that a couple times, like particularly financials, the steel names as well, but we're starting to see them come back a little bit, which I think is a good thing. We don't want to see narrow breadth, right? I've talked a lot about breadth over the last couple of weeks, but it's good to see this, and XLF has been coming back, off the lows, kind of came in here around to the 50-day moving average and is bouncing back a bit, right? So, and if you look at what's going on with bonds. All right, if you want to look at the long bond future, you could look at TLT, but it's a little bit different duration. But so I always like to start with the long bond ETF. I mean, that is breaking down, right? We've talked about this on the weekly chart, right? We did two member webinars this week, and one of them I had said that these bonds are in a downtrend, right? They're below value for the year on the weekly chart, which helps you kind of see the overall picture a little bit better. But you could see when we gave the webinar, I said, hey, bonds are kind of in the middle here, but they're leaning to the downside. So whenever I see this, I tend to think, banks, right? Because when the yield curve goes up, remember, this is the opposite. This is the inverse of the yield curve. Sorry, I'm saying that wrong. This is the inverse of yields, right? So as bonds go down, that means yields go up. And if the lower end of the curve stays fixed, because the Fed is not going to raise rates right now, and the long end of the curve, the interest rates are going up, when you have an upward sloping yield curve, it's generally good for the banks. Generally, right? You have to think about all things being equal. So, I played JP Morgan yesterday in the room that had some follow-through action today. I'm still long some Goldman Sachs here. So I think it's nice to have, I think, too, a couple names on in different groups, right? We talked about that earlier, too. Caterpillar made a nice move this week. It did take out a 1-hour VPOC, right, over here. But I like things like Deere, too. Right, Deere's made a nice recovery. It's almost back to highs, right? So just to kind of talk about something a little bit different, and I mentioned this, we do a couple different things at Tribeca Trade Group, right? We do the live pre-market session. We also do a 1:00 Q&A session as well, and that's when I kind of said, hey, maybe begin to kind of think about some areas that are a little bit different than high growth, right? That group has been very strong for since Monday, right? So sometimes after 2-3 days of a strong rally in a group, again, doesn't mean the whole group goes down, but you start to see a little bit of rotation, right? It's just how the market works. When things rally really hard, people come in and take profits a little bit, and then they take that money out and they put it into some other unloved areas. So maybe think a little bit. Again, you don't have to jump all into value, in my opinion, but maybe just finding one or two names that are a financial that you like, or an industrial, something like that, right? This is another name that I'm watching too. This is a name that I played. I traded a few weeks back. This is MP Materials, so it's a rare earth. We'll look at that chart too, but you could see that this is close to breaking out. It's close, right? And you do have a target. You could take a quick target here at 34.70, and then see if this thing wants to break higher. But it stalled out. Made a little bit of a lower high. Back in mid-January. That's where I traded it. I caught a nice move here. but it stalled out and I abandoned the trade. But I'm watching this one. And then if we want to look at the whole group, the rare earths, they're pretty strong. They're up 2%. Now again, it's very gappy looking because a lot of the members in this ETF are international. A lot of China names in this rare earth ETF, but that's how the whole group looks. All right, to talk a little bit, let me go through the rest of the sectors here very briefly. But that was the bright spot. Again, I always kind of focus a little bit on what were the big movers. Obviously, huge move by the for pot stocks today. This GWPH being taken out. I always go best in breed, or at least what I think is the strongest stock. This GRWG, I traded this thing a little bit today. I bought it pre-market. It was flat pre-market. It didn't move on the GWPH news, and this thing was up 9%. So this was a nice winner for me today. It was a nice buy pre-market in this one. But yeah, I mean, keep in mind, it's a good lesson. I tweeted this out earlier, but when a name gets halted because of, like, GWPH is being bought, but it got halted for a while, always go to the ETF, and you could look to see what, you could Google it, I think, too. When a name gets halted, if it's part of an ETF, the ETF still trades, and the ETF, believe it or not, will imply a price for that. So that's what some of the traders did in TTG this morning, right? This is when the deal was announced, so you could have basically bought this right in here, and then look at this thing was just off to the races for the rest of the day. This is the MJ ETF, and there's a couple other ETFs too that the weight is a little bit larger too. But anyway, just something to mention to you guys, that you could always go to the ETF because it doesn't halt, right? It will continue to trade even though there's a name that's halted. When I was when I used to trade ETFs at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, back in the day, they always used to halt Apple on earnings, and the Qs would trade. So I would always be implying, I would have this master spreadsheet where I would imply the price of where Apple was based on what the Qs were trading after hours, because they would release earnings, but they would have the stock halted. I think that was about 7-8 years ago, I want to say, when that happened. So a long time ago. But in any event, that happens a lot with biotech too, because biotech, there's a lot of M&A there. Clean energy stocks did okay today. They started to kind of come around. Some of which, I was watching. This one did very well today. Clean energy was up 22% today. The one that I've been trading, fuel cell, really, like, it's close. I mean, it's up a lot. It just did not trigger. It didn't. There was calls that were bought yesterday, and a little bit more call buying today too. But for me, my technical system is greater than what I see on the tape, right? And this did not break out. Plug was another one that was very close. Maybe they do it tomorrow, but Plug was also capped at the top of value, right? So if I see resistance, right, if I see calls go up and I see that there's resistance right ahead, which there was right around 68, I don't take it until it takes out that resistance. Same thing with, like, Fastly. We've seen a lot of calls go up in this one. Take a look at what this one did. I put this out on Twitter, and I don't think people know exactly what I mean, but I'm looking at so many things during the day, I don't have time to write a big post. But this thing tried to break value. It actually did close this one bar above, kind of gave a false move, but you got, like, in my opinion, I'm always waiting to see if it's going to break. So this one was a little bit tricky because it did close, but right back inside value. All right, and again, for me, it's a lot of setting alerts. Right, once it kind of gets to that level, and my alert goes off, I look at it. I make a decision based on if it's breaking through there or not. One name that did do that pretty nicely today was Farfetch. Right, this thing finally got going today, finished up 6.5%. This thing is, I went over this earlier, so it's a little bit of a duplicate. But look at how many times this thing had trouble with, like, the 63, 64 level. Also notice this value area for February is very similar to the top of value for last month. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 times. 8 times this thing flirted with breaking out. So a little bit difficult, but it finally pushed through today. Pins was another name that's interesting too. This thing has had a tough time with 74 and finally gets going the day before earnings, right? A lot of these names, they like to run into earnings. Let me just put out a trade here. I was messing around with some Qualcomm, and I just want to put the rest out because I think their conference call is going on now. Yeah, I got a target. I bought some at 149.30 and just sold some at 151. Qualcomm, I thought it went down a little bit too far for the results. Speaking of which, a couple names. One name that's in the TTG Trend Portfolio, Digital Turbine, is having a nice move here. PayPal up a little bit here. PayPal is another tough one because the expectations are so high, right? Everybody knows that PayPal has done well. So you have to think about that in terms of trading, right? If everybody knows something, usually it's harder for the stock to go up. The surprises are the ones that usually make the biggest moves. By the way, I didn't mention the risk disclaimer, but everything I'm going over here is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice, recommendations, anything like that. The semis were weak again, right? Down 1.8%. So even though, Qualcomm and Corvo both getting hit after hours, and the group was already weak. This NVIDIA is such a painful name. I tried, every time that you think this thing is going to break higher, it fails. Very difficult. I try to trade in this thing, and I abandoned it because it's just not. It should be closing on the highs. If it's a real move, it should be closing at least, around where it certainly did. But that's not a good sign again for the stock. It's so coiled up. It's so tempting, but it just is not moving. I don't know. Maybe I should have left the trade on, but when something doesn't do what I want it to do, I get out of it. So here's my exit here. 250, paid 340. I said, don't like the fade. I'm out. Right. And then a lot of trades like SE, today, which is a name that I got long towards the end of last week. Continuing to make highs, and now it's just trade management, right? I've taken 3 targets in this thing, and now I'm just, ratcheting up the trailing stop. A few other names, Datadog, I was able to take a target in this one. Let's see if this one can get going here. It's got earnings. I'm looking for a run into earnings. Took one target at 110, closed at 110.50. So nice to see that because there was a lot of fades at the end of the day. This TIGR, just huge momentum in these China financial names. Look at this thing, up to 24.65, and this FUTU just keeps on trucking, although only up 1.4%, hit a high of 132, right? So here's a good example. I mentioned around 2 o'clock today that names were around the highs of the day, but even if you got long yesterday at 114 and it hits 132, you got to be selling some. You have to be selling a little bit, in my opinion, right? So the greedy sometimes, I don't want to say, the phrase is bulls make money, bears make money, pigs get slaughtered, right? Jim Cramer, Fast Money. I don't know if I would say slaughtered, but taking targets really helps when you have, especially after the third day of a rally, which was basically today for a lot of names. All right, TTD, I don't like the way this thing closed today. It did finish positive, but I just can't get over the 50-day moving average. But again, at least I took a target, right? I put a trade on yesterday in TTD for 660, so took this off for $9, right? That's a nice win. So I'm watching to see what the rest of that name will do. This one, this is GRWH, I'm sorry, GRWG. It's nice when I don't put symbols on there. Shop we were talking about this name. I think it's worthwhile. Let's see where this thing finished for the day. Down on the day, but it's so close to breaking out. It held the top of value. I think it makes sense to have some type of a trade on. I put a call spread on that expires next week. They report in a couple weeks. I'm okay with that. Again, it didn't close very well at all, but at least it's still above value. A couple names that saw just crazy option activity. Vips is one of them. Vip Shop, just crazy opening trades. I think May and August, and then Open saw a lot of calls too. I took the bait on Open, and I bought a few calls on this one. Damn, it did not close above value. So close. Would like to see this thing. Intraday candles, so difficult, right? There's so many calls that went up in this thing today, but it's got to break. What is this here? Right around $29. Right, so there's a couple names to watch tomorrow, but yeah, I really like when things close above value, not back inside the value area. Again, this is the value areas are based on the previous month, and there's significant levels. Right, we see it over and over and over again. All right, what else? ABNB. Yeah, so I mentioned like some opening trades. What's done very well the last couple of days is like a name like Expedia, right? We're hearing more and more about vaccine progress, right? More people getting vaccinated. We're also hearing in New Jersey they're gradually reopening. The dining was already 25%. They go to 35%. New York City restaurants, which have been closed, indoor seating has been closed. They will go to 25% on Valentine's Day. So I think we also saw, a number of some calls go up in things like Delta today. Maybe the airlines can get a little bit of a rally to them, thinking that people are going to start to think about traveling again in a few months as the vaccine rollout continues. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I think that's it. Just my general thoughts are we've had a really nice rally the last few days. Maybe a little bit of profit taking at the end of today. And maybe we start to see a little bit of rotation into some other areas. All right, guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.